What's up, everybody, and welcome back again to the ZMAM show. As today we are talking about the ultimate question: who is the better action film star? Is it the mighty Arnold, or is it Sylvester Stallone? Which he's mighty too. But yeah, we're gonna get into it right here today. Adam, what's going on tonight?
Hey, I think this is a great topic. You're talking about 80s, 90s movies. I mean, you saw Stallone or Schwarzenegger on a film, and you could almost be guaranteed that it was going to be big time action. There are some exceptions, but these were in both decades. I mean, these were the guys. There are other guys that are also known, but like so much material to talk about. Excited to tackle this topic.
It is, and there is a ton of material, so stick with us. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff to talk about and a little bit of fun trivia in between. So getting right into it, we're talking about 2 decades worth of just amazing action movies. We're talking the 80s and we're talking the 90s. 2 amazing times where 80s you had all that experimental film, and you also had the 90s where it was just over-the-top, pure action. It was almost adrenaline, right? So, you know, just it helps to understand a little bit where these guys came from. So let's just real quickly, what I found something out tonight that I never knew before is that Sylvester Stallone was actually in a pretty much porn movie.
Yeah, Party at Kitty and Studs, 1970. I don't know if it was hardcore. I'm not really sure, but IMDb has it listed. You're welcome to check it out yourself. He plays Stud, and his job is to service women.
Yeah, I mean, wait, let's just get into that. Kitty and Stud are lovers. They enjoy a robust sex life, which includes a fellatio and light S&M, specifically Stud belt whipping Kitty. 3 women come over for a party, and Stud services them one after the other. Now, if that is not, with my voice combined there, the ultimate tagline for a movie, I don't know what is.
Yeah, like I said, haven't done much research on it, but I think we know what it is. I mean, the guy's name is Stud, for crying out loud.
Right, I know. And you mind you, we're not going to talk about every single movie they've been in, but we have a few just little fun ones we caught in between. And Adam, I want to ask you something. Now, technically, this would be an action movie.
Yeah, you could say that. Not when you would show to your kids, but yeah, there's plenty of action in it, I'm sure. Maybe that's why it didn't kill his career.
Right. And this was in the early 70s, it shows. And so I'm going to be kind of looking back and forth because the screen, because there's so much information here. But yeah, right. That was 70, literal 70. And he doesn't really get his true place until about the mid 70s, around 76, right? When he wrote and starred in Rocky.
Yeah. And like, honestly, I think one of the things that was cool about Rocky, like we're talking about him as an action star. And I don't know if Rocky's got action in it, but it's not like the kind of in-your-face style action film that you really see in the 80s and 90s.
It's a drama.
It's a drama, but one of the things I really appreciate is I think Stallone shows a lot of range in terms of I think his facial expressions show a lot of emotion in this movie. And I think he really plays the kind of down and out Rocky Balboa, never got a shot until now.
Right.
Like, it just, honestly, great film. Maybe not your standard action film, but it's clear why this broke him into the scene.
It is
fantastic piece of stuff.
He showed range. He showed that he could take a punch in one way or another, right? I mean, with all that, I mean, those are great action scenes in the ring with Apollo, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know if people really understand how hard it is. We try to choreograph some fight scenes more in the later episodes. I know, Adam, you haven't really had a big time shot to get in one of those, but it is damn hard to do that. And and yet
a lot of work goes into it.
And Carl Weathers in there as well. And he did a phenomenal job playing that cocky, all-time favorite star, Apollo, right? And there's a lot of history that goes in there between the Rocky movies. And so a good point to point out is that Stallone wrote a lot of these movies. I mean, he has almost, if not over, 30 plus writing credits in his repertoire of fun stuff. So
yeah, and big movies too. Like we're talking Rocky, we're talking the Rambo films, Cliffhanger. I mean, some of the big movies that you associate with him, he wrote.
Yes. And so that's huge right there. And so not to forget our good buddy Arnold, though. And Arnold with his massive stage presence coming off of those, all the weightlifting, spectacles that he was in. And then finally getting his chance to get into film, which, mind you, he got in a little bit later. He was in, I think, the early 80s.
So kind of add to what you were saying, in the 70s, he had some minor roles. Actually, I think 82 was the first Conan the Barbarian, and 84 was Conan the Destroyer.
Right, you are,
But,
Ken.
I mean, like, in terms of, I don't know. I think Arnold has a lot more range than people give him credit for. But if there was ever a perfect role for Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think it's got to be Conan the Barbarian.
Totally.
Because he's got the physique for it, and like Arnold does have some very solid facial expressions, and like I think it's a role that accentuates his strengths,
Yes.
with the absence of maybe the comedic timing, because I think Arnold actually does have very good comedic timing. But like I think all of his other strengths are present in this role. I think it really shines through. If it's a movie you can get behind, I think you can really appreciate Arnold in this role.
True. And obviously the first Conan was a little bit more on the serious side, right? I mean, it's really understanding kind of where he came from, and just kind of like getting his really solid start. I think by the time you got to the second Conan movie, it was getting a little bit more, not comical per se, but a little more on the fantasy realm, right? You kind of almost like you're playing Hero Quest, for the first time. You got the barbarian, and you got his rogue buddy, and you got the wizard guy. You know what I mean? It's really uncanny how, in fact, maybe Hero Quest was kind of designed off of those characters in some ways. Copyright pending.
And one of the things I wonder kind of about both Stallone and Schwarzenegger is like the sequels. I wonder if the sequels were written, like some trilogies are written as trilogies.
Right.
I wonder if the sequels to their movies, like outside of Terminator, I wouldn't be surprised to know that Terminator was completely written ahead of time. But I wouldn't be surprised if like Conan, Rocky, Rambo, they wrote those movies one movie at a time, and then when it did well, they came out with another one. So like you said, with the second Conan, they're like, hey, this first movie did so well, let's make another Conan. And then, like you said, these classical fantasy tropes start working their way in there, and it's like, okay, I recognize this, I know this.
And it's true, and it was coming off of that success is part of the reason why James Cameron, a very young and ambitious director, was first getting a chance to make this Terminator movie, right? And so he was coming off, and nobody really knew who he was. They needed to see if he could pull this off, and this is Terminator. Ultimately, I don't know if you knew this, Adam, is what kind of upstarted and really launched Cameron's directing career, because then right after that, they said, if you can pull this off, we will let you direct Aliens 2. Okay.
I did hear that, actually. Another buddy of mine was like, when they were trying to figure out who to direct Aliens, they're like, well, let's see what this Cameron guy does with Terminator. And I honestly I haven't seen all of the Terminator movies. I've seen 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, some were better than others, but I can tell you that in each movies, I've been satisfied with Arnold's performance. And what's really interesting is differentiating between 1 and 2, where in 1 he was a villain and 2 he was a hero.
I know.
And I can tell you he was fantastic in both roles, because in 1 he was just so like robotic and intimidating, and when he showed up, he didn't have to say a thing.
No, he didn't.
And honestly, all of the other Terminators that followed none of them captured that as well as he did in Terminator. And you'd almost say it would be a shame that he shifted roles, except he was such an intriguing, good Terminator in Terminator 2. Like him, like kind of the badass cyborg from the future that's here to save your life.
Right.
I mean, so good. Like
so good.
It makes you less, you'd almost be upset about the fact that they made him a hero instead of a villain, except that Arnold is such a good hero.
Well, he is such a great hero, but he also played a great villain, and I'm glad to see in his kind of history movies, he really stuck to that, the hero, the good guy, right? Because I mean, everybody usually loves a winner, a good guy winner. But yeah, him playing that role, Terminator is one of my favorite movies, and T2, although I think I find myself gravitating towards Terminator 1 a little bit more, Terminator 2 is a fantastic piece of cinema. It still still holds up to today. It is just amazing. Like you're saying, it almost gets you super excited just to talk about it. And again, not to get too much off on the directors and so forth, but there was some fun kind of history in between there about Cameron. But so you see this rise of power as these guys are coming up, and somewhere in between there, you started this feud, this kind of rivalry between the two. Did you? Yeah. Okay, right? And so from what I understand from a lot of this, and not to get into too much detail, is basically that I think Stallone was at one of the award shows, and I think he was up for winning one of the awards, and instead Arnold won. And it was kind of like this moment, kind of like, whoa, who the hell is this guy? You know, and Arnold, he's all smiling or whatever like that, and he gets his award and whatnot, and basically it launches this kind of rivalry. And in a way, it was a great rivalry, to sum it up, because these guys fueled each other to do better, to make more, right. You know, to get it. I mean, let's face it, there's been so much great action cinema. We'll name out a good, at least half a dozen movies here that we really love here in just a second. But here's a funny one I want to tell you about in our audience, Adam, which you may not know this. I read this one. This movie called Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Have you ever heard of that one before, Adam?
Haven't seen it, actually. Do tell.
And you know what? I haven't seen it either. And you're not missing much, because it is pretty much a complete piece of horse crap. But mind you, what's so funny about this is that this was during that rivalry, right? It was fueling between the two, Sylvester and got Arnold. And basically, Sylvester got wind that Arnold was eyeing this next movie, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. And I guess Arnold had read the script and saw that it was just going to be a train wreck, and there's just a goofy premise. So he got out the word and stuff like that he was hell-bent on getting this script and getting this spot, which fueled Sylvester to try even harder to get it, and it ultimately ended up winning it because Arnold didn't want it to begin with. And so Sylvester finally gets the role, and I mean, the movie is just so goofy, and it's so out of place. I mean, listen to the movie. I mean, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. And I think he's like a cop or something, and obviously his mom plays a factor, and it's just like, no. But I mean, it was a little trickery done to get him to take the role.
Yeah, no, and I think the thing that I really appreciate about their rivalry is that it, like you said, it fueled them to be better, but like they both still had their distinct styles. Like they didn't try to change who they were or what they brought to the screen.
Very true.
So they just pushed, like, rather than forcing it, they pushed themselves to be the best versions of themselves. Like there's an Arnold style and there's a Sly style, and they didn't deviate from that.
No, and so you were talking to me a little bit about how you felt that Sylvester has a little more maybe range, if you will, and I talked a bit about emotional empathy maybe in the acting.
I think so, and I think in terms of his big films, I think you see it in Rocky. I think you see it in the first Rocky. I think you see it in the first Rambo.
I mean, like that last scene.
He just the range of emotion he shows, but also like if you look through several of Stallone's 70s movies, like he's got a hidden gem. One I want to go check out called Fist, where he basically creates kind of a militant labor union. He played a bodyguard in a movie called Capone.
Okay.
I mean, like,
yep.
Stallone has done a lot of different things, and quite frankly, I think he did it well. I mean, he didn't win any Academy Awards for it, but quite frankly, I think that's partly because the movies just weren't that good.
Yeah, and the Academy. What was the last comment you said?
I was gonna say, but as far as what he did with what he had to offer, I think, I mean, his people criticize him for his voice, and yeah, maybe that's okay, but like his facial expressions and range of emotions for an action star are top notch, in my opinion.
They are top notch, and you're right, he does have that range. And no, I don't think you would ever would have saw an Academy Award coming his way. One, because the Academy is very fickle about action films in general, and usually the movie. Now, not always. I mean, there have been exceptions throughout the years, but not exactly a ton. I mean, they're usually looking for those, I hate to say it, artsy fartsy kind of like, ooh, what a great premise and idea. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that just because it's like such a random idea that means they should win. I mean, what is truly the best film?
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. There are times where some films that, in my opinion, have been very out there have won more on premise than execution. I will agree with that.
Totally. But all the same, we digress. We're not talking about the awards or the Oscars. We are talking about these two guys, and so their action power and their presence on screen. So let's talk about presence on screen. When you think of movies, now here we go. Let's start picturing this. You have Predator. Okay, you know, and you got his biceps on that screen, you know, and he's this, leader for this small action unit that's getting tossed into the forest to take on a mission and ultimately ends up with this alien creature out there. Sounds almost like a crazy premise and like, oh, that can't possibly be a good movie. But it was. It was a freaking amazing movie that critics were not on board with at first. I don't know. Did you know that?
No, that honestly doesn't surprise me. Not the style of movie that people would like,
Right.
but I think this would be a good opportunity. You asked me what I liked about Stallone. I'll talk about what I like about Arnold.
Okay.
First off, Arnold on screen, he's very polished, and like it's not in a bad way because he's polished, but he's a believable style of polish.
Sure.
And part of it is like I feel like when it comes to action films and you see Arnold in a movie, you see a character who's confident and who knows that no matter how bad the situation is, he's gonna get through
Right.
it. And he brings that confidence on screen. I think it really draws you to the roles as he's in. And like even in Predator, when the shit hits the fan, like he's just got this, you know what? I'm gonna find a way to survive
like-
this. And he does. And
Freaked out, but yet like I'm set to the task, right? And
Right.
it's interesting enough because you saw his other friends in the movie, which are all badasses in their own respect, but they're all managing this problem with their buddies' deaths as they start getting picked off one by one. They start managing them in different ways. And although you can tell that Dutch, which is Arnold's character, he's super concerned for his men, obviously, and everything else, but he's like, we got to take this thing down, right?
Right.
Anyways, very, very interesting. Like you said, always committed to really tackling the problem at hand. The Running Man, which talked about in our previous video. What a cool piece of cinema. And let's go ahead and mention another one right along there, which I find very interesting and till this day intrigues me with that ultimate question. And I'm talking Total Recall.
Sure.
But when we talked about also, because I mean, I know this is obviously about the action star, but I wanted to mention too that Arnold also did have some dynamic range too. And I wouldn't say in a ton of his movies, but two in particular that I really kind of enjoyed him in. And one was called Aftermath, where his family is killed in a plane crash and he's basically seeking revenge for the pilot that did it, but not in a sense like it's an action film. It's a real solid drama. Another one was Maggie, which was, I think, was 2015, and that was a zombie flick actually, and a very good zombie one. And it gave a little bit more realism to the whole zombie, virus strain or whatever, when his daughter is bitten and has to go through the slow morphosis of, eventually about to die and becoming one of the undead. And basically Arnold is stuck with some situations to try and figure out, does he send her off to the hospital to where she'll be treated like a lab rat pretty much and then eventually die? Does he give her this little cocktail that's pretty much like a cyanide type deal? It's going to be extremely painful, but she'll die that way. Or does he do it himself? And anyways, anybody who has children or at least has a solid empathy for someone, when you have children involved in a situation like this, you really feel bad for Arnold. And I think he showed a decent array of emotion in that movie as well, too. So again, when you're looking at 77 credits and you can only name 2 or 3 tops where it had true emotional pieces, I wouldn't say that he's a very dynamic character, but God, like you said, stage presence.
And the other thing about Arnold too that gets, and I think, like honestly, one of my favorite Arnold films is actually True Lies. Came out in the mid '90s, I think around '94.
Yes.
And he had a great supporting cast. Like Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Arnold were fantastic in that movie. But like Arnold, and you see this in other roles of his. Arnold actually has great comedic timing. Like he has this weird smile. I think you see it a little bit in Twins with Danny DeVito.
The one-liners.
Yeah. I mean, like when he gets a funny script, he can really sell it. And I think True Lies is just the perfect blend of action and comedy.
It is.
And it's one of kind of like Conan and Terminator. I think True Lies is one of those movies where you're like, how could this happen without Arnold?
No.
It's so weird because it's not like that standard action flick. I mean, there's plenty of action in
it,
but
a ton of action.
So much comedy.
It does.
And he really sells it. And so I agree that maybe he could be more dynamic, but I think that comedic timing of his, it's an unsung quality that he uses on multiple occasions.
What I heard when Arnold takes on a role, he gets super serious about it. Like I've heard many directors have actually accounted for this. I mean, he brings it as all. So for someone to say like, yeah, right, he's just a brainless bub with a gun in his hand, I fully disagree with you in an instant. To finish out on Sly, are there any top movies that have really kind of rung out in your head, at least in the 90s or even the 80s, that you're just like, man, solid cinema, solid action?
I think Sly's two major roles in action movies became like the detective slash
Yep,
specialist, and the guy with nothing to lose who was going to get the job done. I feel like that's really what you started to see out of Sly moving
sure.
forward. And like, I don't know, I'm trying to think. I actually really liked Demolition Man. I mean, it's not like a great movie, but
Old
like
Demo
the
Man.
weird thing about real weird thing about Demolition Man is I feel like Wesley Snipes was more the action star of that movie, and Sly was more the detective.
That's true.
I'm trying to think of some of the other movies I've seen him in. I think The Expendables was an excellent revival. Tango and Cash, him and Kurt Russell,
Yes,
like that was an earlier one in the
it
80s, and
was.
I mean I just a solid 80s action flick. I think Sylvester when in his prime, Kurt Russell was on the way up. Those two met in that movie, and
Oh,
like
yeah.
it was a fantastic 80s action flick. That as far as Sly action movies go, that's probably kind of one that you don't think about. A movie that's not a Rambo movie.
Yeah,
That's probably one to throw out there as a favorite that maybe doesn't get a lot of
I don't think it
attention.
does get a lot of attention. It is definitely hidden in the rough, and I think I kind of randomly came across it in my younger teen years. I think that's when I first saw it, and then over the years I was like, oh man, I want to go see that again. And it's fun. Other fun ones he was in along the way, obviously Cliffhanger. That was a big one. With the woman dropping from the beginning and just kind of leading to his spiral down to finally getting back to it, and then obviously the problems that ensue later on. Because I know Adam, you haven't watched that one yet, but Cliffhanger was a great movie. Other fun ones. I call it fun. I wouldn't actually call it good, but Judge Dredd. It was interesting. The newer
Yeah,
the
it's charming.
charming. The newer one with Carl Urban is phenomenal. We may talk that one sometime. We'll talk the two and then maybe some differences if we get a chance for you to see those. Other fun ones. I'm sure Assassins with him and Antonio Banderas. That was a good one. I'm just kind of looking through the list here. There's so many. But
I mean, I
yeah,
I heard really good things about Copland. It's one that I really want to check out.
yeah,
And I think the thing is that was more of a suspense movie, but I feel like it was very. I remember when it came out, and it was very well received by the
yeah.
critics. So that's, I mean, and maybe another movie that kind of really shows off Sly's
It
range.
does.
Just because we like Arnold doesn't mean Stallone was very good at it. He had a couple of things that he could bring to the action genre, and he did them very well. But like you said, I think he rode. I think like the Rocky movies were good, but even as early as the second movie, it almost kind of felt like they were kind of repeating the same plot a little bit. It's like,
Yes,
when is this guy gonna not have struggles?
yes.
I mean, the first Rambo movie, the PTSD was huge. His acting in that, and after that, it just kind of evolved into becoming like this super powered
This is
badass, which I
true.
guess Arnold is kind of like that too.
He
So
is.
it was just a different feel of movie. And I think, like you said, because like maybe Stallone's the better actor overall, but because of the variety of roles he's been in, Arnold's screen presence, his cocky demeanor, the fact that anytime Arnold steps on the stage, you know he's going to get the job done. As far as strictly action goes, I don't know how you can't pick Arnold,
I
quite
I think
frankly.
you're right. I mean, and you said a lot of it, and I don't really need to repeat it. It's just there's just a lot that he brings to that camera, and when he's on camera, and it's just amazing. And it's what's so interesting is, like you just said, he's going to get the job done, but yet you're willing to watch the whole movie. I mean, you're not
Right,
sitting you're not
right.
sitting there like, okay, in the end, Arnold's going to get him. I mean, if you're super cynical, when you watch movies, then yes, you might say
Yeah.
that. But if you're willing to suspend the disbelief and actually enjoy a film for what it is, even though Arnold's going to kick that ass and he's gonna win in the end, but I'm willing to watch that movie and watch that story, listen to that story, and find out how it's all going to come to be. So I think it's pretty clear that the winner, in Adam and I's both eyes, is going to be Mr. Arnold. Boom.
Yeah, if you're talking strictly action, the range of roles he was in combined with his on-screen presence, unbeatable,
Yeah, he's just awesome.
even by Sly.
And Sly, although very cool, and he's had some great cinema along the way, and he's always entertaining to watch on screen. It's fun to watch him also work out the problems and also win as well. I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't love seeing a great 80s or 90s action star kick some ass on screen? I mean, it's good times all around.
Hey, Yeah, 80s and 90s action was a big part of me growing up. So yeah, thanks to both of them.
Yeah, and for many of us out there. So this was a decently long one here. There's a lot of cinema to talk, so we wanted to make sure we kind of talked through some of the strong ones. Maybe you heard a few names here that you weren't familiar with, and maybe you disagree with us. Maybe Stallone in your eyes outpass and beats Arnold to a pulp. Make sure to let us know in the comments. I don't see a lot of comments from you guys, but if you take the time, definitely I will respond to you, and Adam can get back out there too, and we'll talk it over. Make sure to visit deadnightmare.com, my website. It was down for a while, technical difficulties. I'm not gonna get into it. Point is, it is back up and running. It has all of our Dead Nightmare short series zombie fun stuffs out there. That's our short series, and Adam stars in it as one of the main actors. And there's also the most recent videos we've done, like this one, Chevy Chase, The Running Man, and all these other fun ones that we've done over the last couple of years. So make sure to check it out and follow us on the different interwebs. It's all in the comments. And I think we will catch you guys at the next review. See you guys.